Police at your door. Bailiffs demanding entry. A legal threat lands without warning. In that moment, who's actually on your side? This is Willoughby Genius Mark II, a legal protection platform that acts like your own personal legal team. Built on over 750,000 verified legal entries, spanning 50+ countries, it delivers immediate, actionable guidance when it matters most. No appointments, no gatekeepers, no £300 an hour delays. Just clear, lawful direction in real time. It doesn't replace the law, it gives you direct access to it. Powered by advanced AI, Willoughby Genius Mark II verifies, prompts, and protects. Calmly, precisely, and without bias. It never forgets a statute, it never panics, and it's always available. Legal technology is moving fast. Those who understand it early will have choices. Those who don't will be managed by it. Willoughby Genius Mark II goes further than any barrister. It educates too. Know your rights, act decisively, take back control. Click on the link below and use LSB Pro for £5 off your first month's premium.
Hello and welcome to another LSB Film podcast with me, your host Chris Brooks. I hope everyone's well. Today's conversation goes far beyond politics, headlines and the usual surface level debates around authority and freedom. Joining me today are Hannah and Jason from notaperson.org and Zen Jungle. Two people who have spent years questioning the belief structures that most people in society accept without hesitation. What began for them as a deeply personal journey through mental struggle, conditioning and searching for peace eventually became something much bigger. A complete re-evaluation of the systems, identities and assumptions that shape modern life. In this episode we explore the nature of unconscious consent, the difference between living man and legal person, the role fear plays in maintaining that system, and why so many people feel trapped in lives that they never consciously chose. Whether or not you agree with every conclusion that we come to here in this podcast or not, this is one of those conversations that will make you stop, think and examine the frameworks operating quietly in the background of everyday life. Jason, Hannah, welcome to the show.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
So yes, I'm very thrilled to have both Jason and Hannah with us today on this show. Marvellous work that you've been doing, and I think it's about time we got you even more popular. So my first question to you both really would be, was there like a specific moment where you realised the world operates very differently from what we're taught? And was there like a crux moment where you thought, we've got to do something about this?
There's a interesting journey behind that, to be honest. The journey we've been on started with kind of personal crisis and lots of mental health, and writing a book that helped people to feel better, find their peace, and kind of exit the conditioned belief structures that our society builds around them and within them. So we started on our own journey, and helping others on their journey to really let go of conditioning, let go of belief structures that were dictating life, that were a framework that we call society, but it's a framework that was designed by somebody else. It's nothing to do with us. And we certainly didn't create it. You didn't create it. There's none of the mass population created it, but it is created. You know, we're all formatted. We're all living the same day on repeat. We're all going to work. We're all earning money. We're all having breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time. And broadly, we're a product of the information we've consumed, either from school, from parents, from media. And that information accumulates within someone, until they feel compressed and usually they feel like they can't go anywhere. They've got depression, anxiety, a need to escape, a feeling that something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. And that's
Mm,
because they've got a program running within that is so dense and they're trying to feel better, but they can't figure out how to feel better. And that's kind of common against a majority of people.
So what you're saying is that you think people intuitively feel like there's something unnatural going on. They just haven't got the ability to articulate what it is, and so that comes out in depression and
Yeah, and
anxiety.
you know the thoughts tell them that they've got to be something, do something, have things that they're going to feel better if they buy things. Um, and that's because that's been implanted as a belief structure. So they're trying
Mm,
to feel better by controlling the outside world, buying stuff and doing whatever. And it means they become very dependent on the outside world because they're actually of the belief that how they feel is dictated by who they're with, what they've got, and what the world's doing outside and around them. So
mm.
the truth is, most people are unconsciously in a cage.
Yeah, would you say it's safe to say that most of modern life is kind of built on unconscious consent?
Yeah, yeah. And it's we've agreed to certain norms, especially in the Western world. We've agreed to certain norms that are somebody else's norms, and they were never put there to benefit us. But all those agreements work together to create a limited life. You know, you can only live this way. You can't live any other way. So we went on a journey from that kind of crisis point into inner work and actually letting go of those belief structures. And that tangibly revealed the nature of the system itself because when you lose your belief structures and the frameworks that you've been working on, the system becomes incredibly visible because it's sending you letters asking you for money, telling you you owe it money, telling you to comply and to do what you're told.
Mm,
And that's the system's belief structures being applied to you as if you are subservient to it. So as if it's got authority over you. So our journey has been a very clear one. We saw that nobody has authority over us, whether it be a government, whether it be a system, whether it be belief structures. But we saw that the nature of the system that we are in is to try to apply its belief structures for its own benefit. So they all they want to do is control you, and more to the point, they want to extract as much as they possibly can from you, or it wants to extract as much as it possibly
mm.
can from you. So tax on tax on tax on tax.
Don't forget
And
tax.
yeah. Um, so it became really visible to us, and we rejected it, and we went on a journey to look at how to look. We knew it wasn't the law. We knew it was a statutory attachment um, to the person. So we learned quite a lot about law versus statute. But then over a period, we kind of challenged the system on every level,
Mm.
every level. And now we understand it probably better than most. So we now share it. We now explain to people how to separate themselves from the person, statutes attached to the person. So the whole control mechanism relies on you believing you're a person.
Well, I have to say, I'm loving your t-shirts. Um, and I'm sure there probably aren't that many new people watching this, but for those who are completely new to this, how would you explain the difference between the living man, woman, and the legal person?
So it's a really simple differentiation. The legal person is a created entity, So Parliament and statute created a reference point in a database that they call a person. And there's actually two kinds of person in their database. There's a natural person and a legal person. Legal persons are bound by statutory rules, regulations, and taxes, but legal persons are not natural persons. So, and natural persons are not living beings. So both person types exist within statute. One of the person types, the legal one, is the one that is bound by statutory legislation, so the legal person.
Mm.
And you are not a legal person. I am not a legal person. I'm not a natural person, and neither are you either. So we're not a person at all. But the system wants to presume that we are. So not a person's been all about describing in law the difference between actually the three entities. So the legal person, the natural person, and the living being, and how the system applies statutes actually by a certain kind of fraud to living beings by extending their reach past their creation. Their creation is the legal person. They extend statutory reach to the living being beyond the legal person by making a couple of presumptions.
Mhm.
So a legal person is just a paperwork entity. It can't do anything. It doesn't breathe. It can't take action, and it doesn't own any possessions. The living being has all of the capacity. It's alive, it's breathing. But the system assumes that the living being acts as an agent for the legal person. And that one assumption, presumption, means that they apply what they can lawfully and do apply to the legal person to the living being beyond it. And it's really a scam. So it's a
Mm.
presumption that brings a living being into a world that they created, the person world, by presumption, and applies the rules that they apply to the person to the living being. They can apply whatever rules they like to the person. All statutes only apply to legal persons.
Mm.
So they can apply whatever they want, and statutes applied by default to legal persons. So it is true to say every legal person is bound by statute. What's not true to say is that a living being is or has agreed to be an agent for a legal person, and the system presumes that they have. So it's a really simple underlying structure, and it's a structure that's visible in law. So it's not hidden. Um, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not straw man logic, and
Mm.
it doesn't fit with common law logic or what a lot of people are getting a little bit entrapped in. Um, our current legal system is a combined legal system with statute, common law, and equity. That system has clear differentiation between the legal person, the natural person, and the living being. And it assumes that living beings act as agents for legal persons.
Yeah. No. Thank you for that explanation. That's a good one. Hannah, we haven't heard from you yet. I'd like to know what you think, why this particular topic triggers so many people emotionally. The amount of emotional reactions that I get when I talk about this stuff, it's quite shocking. Have you experienced a lot of pushback from people?
Yes, especially on social media because obviously people have the luxury of hiding behind their screen. And when you're discussing the topic with children being involved, obviously Jason and I have a daughter, and I talk about that a lot on TikTok. Um, And I think to a degree, a lot of people are very understanding, and whether they've encountered it before or not, when they hear it, they do find it very interesting. But there's definitely also a category of people who really don't get it, and that's totally fine. That's where they're at on their journey. Um, but it is interesting to see because I think there can be a lot of fear in some people, and
Mm.
maybe that's why they're choosing not to get it. And I can understand that because when I started out, I thought this journey was quite terrifying, and I didn't know what the repercussions would be. I didn't know what could go wrong. Um,
Would you say it's safe to say that you think that fear is the foundation that keeps most systems running?
yes, fear, conditioning, um, and and that sense of feeling trapped, like you don't really know how to make a change. I think, especially these days, a lot more people are feeling quite disenamored with the system.
Mm.
But there is, especially on some of the videos I post, this overwhelming feedback that they don't know how to make a change and they kind of feel like victims of their own circumstance, which again is a very careful design of the system. But there
Mm.
are ways to make changes, and you've just got to be ready to see them and ready to give it a go.
No, absolutely, yeah. I'm working on that myself. I was going to say because obviously you're both into this. How how important is it for the mother and father to both be on the same page with this?
Do you want to answer that?
For us, very important, and I would assume so for most couples.
Mm.
Important in several ways, really, because I also get, especially from men, a lot of people complaining about their wives on my comments, saying how they get it and understand it all, but their wives don't, and therefore they can't raise their children the way they want to. Um, which is going to create issues partly for the way that child is raised and being split between two opposing points of view, but it's also going to create issues in the relationship. Uh,
Mm.
so I think that for us to raise a child in a way that we both see is a lovely way to bring her up and that we both see benefits her freedom. It's very helpful that we
Yeah,
are on the
no,
same page.
absolutely. See, my issue isn't so much with this, like the child side. It's more like your bills and all that kind of side of things that I meet that brick wall. Um, but I'm sure things will change eventually. Would you say then, because I'm assuming, is your daughter school age or too young for that at the moment?
She's 2.5, so
Two
too
and a
young
half.
for school at the moment, but we will be homeschooling her
Yeah,
anyway.
that's what I was thinking. So what role would you say schools play in conditioning people into compliance, especially these days?
The reality is that school serves only one purpose. It serves the purpose of creating subservient individuals who are willing to enter a job first thing in the morning and leave it last thing at night and be told what to do.
Mm.
Um, if you consider going to school, if I ask this to most people and say, what did you learn? Did you come out of school fully prepared to for the next stage of your life, or did you have to start from scratch on leaving school and learn everything that was ever useful to you? Most people say I had to start from scratch. And that isn't accidental, that is deliberate.
Mm.
Um, we get switched from 40-minute lessons, um, lesson after lesson, so context switching. So children have to move from one subject in their minds to another. They've got to catch up to where they were in the last lesson of the same subject. It's completely the most ridiculous model for actually teaching anybody anything because you start from behind every time you switch. And then you force feed kids with information that they don't find interesting, they don't want it. And
Mm.
essentially, the school system teaches them that somebody else is in charge, that if they don't do what they're told, they will get a penalty, and that they're not in control of their own selves. And actually, for most kids, parents extend that because they believe that they're in authority over their kids as well. And so what happens is strangers in school are in charge of your children because you tell your kids to do what they're told with those strangers. And then your kids come home and you tell the kids to do what they're told. And kids are learning the authority is external and they're not independent and they are not what you might call sovereign or self-governing.
Mm.
Um, and I can't see another purpose for the education system beyond that. It just doesn't seem to serve any other purpose other than childcare, maybe.
Yeah, well, I was going to say childcare, the convenience of being able to go to work because they had to get both mother and father out to work, didn't they? So they could break up the family unit. Oh, schools hate them. Do you think humanity is waking up though? Or do you think we're just being technologically absorbed? Because
It's a it's an interest from our perspective, it's an interesting question. As your belief structures kind of soften and you pull back from the whole situation, it becomes pretty clear that we're all on a descent into a dense structure of control. We arrive here and learn to kind of become compressed in a cage of our own minds. And then what we do is we hit a moment where we start to question that because it feels like there's nowhere to go in your life. And then you systematically start to question your beliefs.
mm,
And I think that what you're noticing is that there's a majority population that have been actually probably either deliberately or unintentionally, but I'd say probably deliberately triggered into questioning their beliefs about the world, about authority, and anybody who watches TV still,
mm,
the madness just gets more and more incomprehensible. We don't watch TV, but you can see that the world is getting more incomprehensible, and that makes belief structures very difficult to hold on to because you can't. If you thought that the world and the governments and the system was a positive thing and it was there for your benefit, that belief is getting harder and harder to hold.
mm,
So are people waking up? Definitely. There's definitely a wave of people that are starting to see the light, and they're all at different stages. I'd say that everybody's on the same journey.
mm,
Um, I do think we're at a fork in the road because it appears like the system is trying a very intentional grab for control at this moment. So they're going to try to make it's going to appear like this, they're trying to stop the awakening or they're trying to stop the realization that there is no external authority and that whole structure has been pulled over their eyes. And what they're trying to do is beat it with digital prisons. So, the gated access to services through digital ID, etc., is an opportunity for the system to double down on its control mechanisms. And if people don't pay attention quickly, there will come a moment where the system isn't something that you can challenge easily. Um, and it will have done a land grab for control of a good majority. So I think what we think is happening is that there's going to be a split um, of society, and a certain number of people are going to go down the avenue of fully controlled. And what I would suggest is a growing number of people who are starting to question it and who are deeply questioning it, and like you guys, um, they are going to reject the system or disregard it. That's the most powerful thing you
Mm.
can do. It turns out, the not a person thing will explain to you why you were never actually in the system. It's just understanding the law around that makes it so that you can then disregard the system. And you can still have a digital ID and you can still use the infrastructures, but you change your relationship with the person because the system only controls the person. It doesn't control living beings, but it will try to control you if you don't know the difference.
Yeah, it's not so much about removing the tripwires, it's just about making them visible so you can navigate around it, really, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use them to your benefit.
Yes, absolutely. What I really like to talk about is the passport that you've just uh got for your daughter, without the need of bowing down to government. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we submitted a passport application first time round when she was probably 8 or 9 months old. And that one went on for a year and a half before it finally got rejected. Well, there was a lot of to and fro conversations, and we learned a lot in that about what to do and what not to do. So then we submitted a second application, probably 6 months ago now, roughly. Um, we'd always committed prior to this to not doing a statutory declaration, which is pretty much the only evidence they accept if you don't have a birth certificate. Um, but this time round, we did end up doing a statutory declaration. But we put a lot of terms and conditions within that statutory declaration that stated things that were really important, both for her freedom and her status, and separating the living being from the person that may or may not have been created, but also for ourselves. So we used it as a vehicle to put something on the system that would log where we stand in terms of digital ID and the relationship between us and our persons. And a few quite interesting things unfolded after that. We sent this statutory declaration in, which also stated we were not her parents, because again, parents is a statutory,
Legalese.
yeah, underneath the person. And I think probably fairly innocently and perhaps understandably in the eyes of some unwitting passport office agent, that rang alarm bells and we got a call from social services. But there was a really curious unfolding in that call because social services rang under the guise of a welfare check, but they didn't ask any welfare questions relating to our daughter. They only asked again and again in various ways, and at first very subtly, but as it went on, very obviously, would I accept parental responsibility, and would I agree that I was a parent, which I did not do on the phone.
They're constantly just trying to get you to commit joinder.
Yes, absolutely. So I just repeated that I was her mother, that I had responsibilities as her mother, but I just said I don't understand the word parent. If you're going to want me to agree to be a legal category, then I'm going to need a very big contract that explains exactly what I'm agreeing to. And eventually they did drop it. They tried to get me to say that Jason was a parent as well, and that he wouldn't be recognised with any rights if that without in the absence of a birth certificate, which is obviously not true.
Mm.
But yeah, that phone call was dropped eventually. They went back with saying there was no well-being concerns, despite having not asked any well-being questions. And the application proceeded. And yeah, maybe you can talk through the different points we put through in it.
Yeah, the next thing that happened actually is they came back to us, even though we'd supplied lots of evidential documentation about the birth and even pictures
Oh yes,
and
because we had no medical records either, because she was birthed outside of the medical system, so that threw in a curveball.
Oh, great. Nice.
so they had probably a massive stack of evidence actually that, that it was all good. But what they came back with is that they were going to need signatures of both parents. So they wanted us, even though we'd detailed in the statutory declaration that we would not be taking the statutory role of parent, they then came back with a very pointed request, which was we need the parents' signatures. We need a signature from both parents in addition to the evidence that you provided. Um, Now, I don't know if your viewers understand the nature of this. I know a lot of people
Oh,
think
so
that
it's a
they,
50-50 mix.
yeah, I think a lot of people think that when they apply for a passport, some people are doing it without a birth certificate, and they actually think that if they do a statutory declaration, they've got around the system. So just so that you can understand, when you do the statutory declaration, the default position would be that that would replace the birth certificate. So essentially, they will create a person based on the statutory declaration instead of the birth certificate. So all you would be doing is you would have gone through the pain of not getting your birth certificate. And then when you apply for a passport with a statutory declaration, that would trigger the creation of the same thing that you were trying to avoid with the birth certificate. So it's quite a nuanced legal framework that you need to understand when you do it.
Mm.
So we were very clear we didn't want them to create a person. And if they did create a person, we wanted to establish the position of the person as having had, as her person would have no agent and it would have no beneficial interest, meaning it would be a bare trustee in our private trust. So we stated all of this in the statutory declaration, and we stated our own position within that trust. So our persons are bare trustees, the living beings are beneficiaries, and we've had that trust established for a while. And they accepted the nature of the statutory declaration, but then wanted us to sign as parents. So obviously they were trying to circumvent the whole statutory declaration by coming back and aiming for signatures from both parents. So when they did that, we wrote them a very detailed law proposition back from the trust. All of our communication from the very beginning of the application to the end was from our private trust. So we never wrote as parents and we never wrote as anything other than trustees in fiduciary capacity for the trust. And we were establishing that any person created would be governed by the trust. It would not have our daughter as an agent, and our own persons were detailed as bare trustees. And we stated clearly that we wanted it placed on record that we were not agents for those persons and that they were held as bare trustees within the private express trust. So that's a very powerful statutory declaration because our aim was to put it into a government department where it could be centralized for the digital ID records and where it would have to be logged and on file. So in theory, if you got a digital ID, you would you would get scanned and that record would be the record that comes back, which means that you don't need to establish your lawful position in any other way, having done that. So we did that on the statutory declaration, and then when they asked for parental signatures, we wrote them a very forceful letter from the trust and told them that they were in breach of the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights through not issuing the passport, and that the structure of the statutory declaration must be recognised. And 2 days later, they sent a passport approved. We're making your passport notice. So
Great stuff.
um, it was a very big strategic win
Mm.
in terms of getting the system to issue a passport on the basis that we put forward in the statutory declaration. It was also a strategic win because we'd placed them on notice of taking them to the High Court for a Bill of Rights and a claim against the Constitution as well as law from the equity trust position, which they obviously did not want because they immediately issued the passport without any further requests for signatures or anything else. It was immediately issued.
Wow, what a journey. So did it pan out better than you hoped or as you hoped or what how do you feel on reflection now to how you started?
I'd say it's quite positive because when we started out for the first application, we were still very much learning and were slightly on the fence as to whether getting her a passport was the right thing to do because as many people like to comment, as soon if you've kept her out the system for this long, it's kind of a shame to make her visible to the system.
Mm.
Um, but equally, on the counter side of that, it is in this day and age very difficult to live a life completely out the system without them ever knowing about you because you can't really go anywhere or do anything. You would end up living a limited, well, depending on your mindset, a limited life to a degree
Mm.
because, I know there's a lot of people out there to say you don't need a passport to travel, but personally, I haven't met anyone who's crossed borders without
Well,
a
let me
passport.
stop you there. I have interviewed a man on a yacht from New Zealand and he's traveled the world with no papers whatsoever.
Okay.
There you go. I just thought I'd throw that. If I can find the link, I'll send you that because you might just.
I personally don't have a yacht, but but that sounds great. So I think in terms of actually allowing her the freedom to do what she wishes, we
Mm.
don't leave here much. We're very happy here, but I don't know who she's going to grow up to be, and if she wants to travel the world, that's her business, and I don't want to have prevented her from doing that. But we have also put on record on the system both her position and our positions. So should it ever need to come up, there's always that legal framework there that they have recognized through issuing this passport without rebutting what we've said in their language, in their statutory declaration that they asked for. And that puts us in quite a strong position for any future cases that we might need.
Mm.
As part of what we've done, this is one strand of maybe 12 strands where we have actioned the separation from the person.
So correcting
So,
the errors then.
pardon?
Going through the process of correcting the errors, correcting your standing.
Yes, correcting your standing and ensuring that you end up in governance of the person rather than as agent. And you protect your beneficial interest as well. So obviously, all tax only attaches to the person, and it only actually attaches to a person on the assumption that your beneficial interests, so your life, energy, thoughts, and capacity, plus everything you've ever bought, have been transferred into the person. Well, of course, they haven't. So we have done a lot of work to work with any agency at all who wants to try to apply tax, apply rules, apply licensing, apply anything. And we've done that in the Crown Court as well. Um, and we've been focused on um, establishing reliable separation that works because obviously most people are encountering a system that appears not to listen to re-establishing standing and appears to do its own thing and disregard much of what you do if you're doing it through the common law routes or whatever.
Mm.
And what we've done in the multiple strands is proven that done in the right way, in the simple way, the differentiation and change of relationship between you and your person can be actioned in a way that the system recognizes. So we've done that on several levels, and the passport's just one um, level that we've done it on. But we do it on taxation, we do it on licensing, we do it on council tax, we do it on everything. So, and we've been successful in all of those strands.
Happy days. Happy days. So would you say people, do you think people own things anymore, or do you think it is a case of own nothing and be happy? And the reason why I say that is because we've talked about trusts, and we know how the rich get richer. They don't own anything, do they? It's all in trust. They just use it. So is there a kind of backwards message when they say you'll own nothing and be happy? Because that's exactly what they do.
Just so you understand ownership, the majority population is completely conditioned out of any clear understanding of ownership. People think that title is ownership. So if my name's on a deed, um, I think I own the property. And what you need to understand is the you who is owner is the you who holds beneficial interest. So what you need to understand is that the trust structure that you're relating to is the only true form of ownership. So if you are a beneficiary, that means you hold beneficial interest in your property. That means you are the sole owner of your property. So this idea that it's owned by the trust, no, the beneficiaries in the trust own the property technically because they have beneficial interest in the property. They do not hold title. Titles can be held in the person, they can be held in limited companies, they can be held in different legal structures, but they are bare trustees, so they're not held with any beneficial interest. So interestingly, this you'll own nothing and be happy principle is the opposite of what a trust really achieves.
Okay.
A trust separates title and beneficial interest, just to put it as an example, ownership is really the right to use the property freely. So that's called beneficial interest. Title is the deed and the plan and the line around the property, etc. It is not, the two are not the same. So when you have full use of your own property, you have beneficial interest as the living being. Title can reside in a third party entity, such as a person, such as a company, and that company does not own the property. It hasn't got free use of the benefit of the property. So ownership is beneficial interest, and trusts redirect beneficial interest into living beneficiaries, such as you. So if your property is correctly placed into trust, you own that property in a bigger sense than you've ever owned it.
Mm.
And title can be elsewhere. It can be in a company and it can be in a person. But the title's largely an academic principle. It's the name on the deed or the vehicle registration or the beneficial interest is the right to use the car. The the vehicle registration is the title. The title
Mm.
does not give you the right to use the car. The title is a registered title in statute.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry to
No,
give
no,
you
that's
that
good.
long explanation, but from a point of view of do you own nothing and be happy when you put things into trust, you couldn't own it any more than when you put it into trust.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense when you put it like that. I'll shut up now. Ah, dear. No, honestly, it's fantastic having this conversation with you. So I didn't you do something about the HMRC as well? where you got them to confess something or own up to something?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, it's one of the first things that we were messing with actually. Jason had a self-assessment notification come through, and they were aware that under their normal circumstances, he owed us, a fair chunk of money. So it wasn't a case that he just hadn't earned the threshold or whatever. It was very much the case that whatever process we went through had a significant impact. But after a few months of back and forth correspondence, he received a letter saying, I think it was something along the lines of, you or your financial advisor has informed us that you don't need to file a self-assessment tax return. We agree and withdraw the notice for you to file, which is pretty
I
significant
was going to
because
say that's quite big. That's quite a big.
yeah, the
Mm.
most you often get is no response, or they just drop it and disappear. So to receive a letter that stated it was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time this morning and the information that you've shared. It's nice. We just need more people to learn how to do it themselves.
Well, if you can help people get to our notaperson.org
Mhm.
presence, it's cheap and easy. And not only that, there's such an amount of great awakening content on there. It's all free. And then there's courses that will get people quickly up to speed on how to truly understand the person and the living being, and then how to establish a legal position that actually works, and then how to challenge the system on an ongoing basis to from usually from a trust logic. We'd always recommend people set up a private trust, which just makes it easy. It's not
Mm.
essential, but people, I think, grow up believing that taxes is an unavoidable entity, that they are bound by these rules and regulations of government by default, and that there's no escape from it. And what we've demonstrably shown is that those statutory legislations only attach to the legal person, and you can easily challenge the government to prove the connection between you and the legal person, which doesn't exist, by the way.
Mm.
They have no contractual proof. So once you understand this basic mechanism, you don't need to have to be a lawyer or understand maritime law or get involved in the common law stories. You can do this so simply with very simple understanding, a trust position that you never deviate from, and responses that essentially end up being always the same.
Mm.
Short responses that just simply place the system on notice. So
Great stuff. Well, I will leave a link to your website and your TikTok account in the video description so people can go and check it out. Again, thank you very much for your time today, and I hope everyone watching it has enjoyed it and learned something. Please go and check these guys out. They're amazing. Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
No worries. Take care.